Hello, and thank you very much for tuning in to the podcast series by the New Silk Road Project. I'm your host today, Charles Stevens, the founder of the New Silk Road Project. This series is dedicated to understanding and raising awareness of one of the most important development strategies of the 21st century, China's Belt and Road Initiative. The centerpiece of the New Silk Road Project, an initiative supported by Jeep, CSIS, Magellan Capital, the University of St Andrews and Shira, was to travel the course of the Silk Road economic belt from London to Yiwu in eastern China, interviewing the key actors and academics along its course. We will have to apologise in advance for some of the tangential moments in this podcast series, and also the variable quality of audio footage. We do hope this series sheds important light into China's growing global presence and the significant changes taking place across Eurasia. It is very easy to forget quite how large a country China is, and to reach our next meeting with Samuel Kim, it took us over 48 hours in a train from the Chinese border to Chengdu. We had had previous meetings in Xi'an at the International Trade and Logistics Park, but unfortunately we were not able to publish them. Our conversation with Samuel, however, was fascinating. He is the founder of the Center for Asian Leadership, and we had a broad discussion with him about his choice of geographical focus, what his leadership initiative hopes to bring to Asia, the importance of standards and rules, and the development of multilateral institutions in Asia.
Yes, I am Samuel Kim. I'm originally from South Korea. I currently lead a Center for Asia Leadership Initiatives, which was established back in Boston when I was a student at Harvard Kennedy School of Government. This organization brings the best practices on leadership that is developed and taught at Harvard closer to Asia. So we along with a few of our teaching members, faculty members, we come to Asia, different parts of Asia, and we share these insights and lessons with them. For my professional background, I started my career as a diplomat representing South Korea, and I have been working at the UN, also at UNESCO. Then, as a Korean male, you have to go and serve in the army. So I was an army officer for 2.5 years. Then did a small social enterprise, which I ran for about 5 years. It's a franchise, a food franchise company. Then before heading off to Harvard, I worked for a strategy consulting company, a hedge fund, where I was able to witness the 2008 financial crisis. And now I'm very happy to be running this organization. I'm at my happiest moment in my life, trying to impact and change the lives of people, but also trying to, bring in some impact that they can help to make our world look better and become better. Yeah.
And it seems like you've had a pretty both eclectic and international career. Mm-hmm. Why have you chosen to focus on Asian leadership?
That's a great question. I think Asia is becoming more and more important. It's becoming important place in the global marketplace and politics. Close to about 60% of the population reside in Asia, the biggest continent, 48 countries. But at the same time, we have lots of challenges that we need to look into. Geostrategic competition, by far, among all these continents, it's at the highest, 33%. What about the income gap, right? It's at 22%, which is also the highest among all these continents. So there's a lot of work to be done. But also at the same time, there are opportunities. So the leadership for us is how do we identify these opportunities into something that can really help to improve human conditions. That can be creating jobs. That can be creating new opportunities that will benefit the whole world. But at the same time, we also need to share whatever the best practices we can that can help to turn the downsides into upsides. So that sort of education, that sort of leadership training, novel experience are vital to helping Asia become a responsible a player in the global politics and marketplace. Yeah.
And of course, Asia's an important player, but it's a region that can't be seen as in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
as the global economy shifts eastwards, how do you think that this could affect global governance in the future?
I always believe. I try to always, explain that we need to pursue for a thick democracy. The governance is important. Transparency is important. In order for any of the big projects to have a sustained impact, right? Which will not be 1 year, 2 years, but some of the projects are going to be 5, 10 years, and 20 years. We need to make sure that the governance, has to be placed. So Asia. One thing about Asia I noticed was that we're in the West. They have institutionalized democracy after they have put in place the so-called liberalism or freedom. Magna Carta 2015, and then that's how they have institutionalized. So the freedom comes before democracy. But in many of the countries in Asia, we have established democracy first, the institution, but then followed by freedom or liberalism, right? And so in countries like this, there's a tendency to always, get into a pitfall of populism, and a change in politics comes also with quite a high social cost. So it is really, really important that not only the government, the politicians, and the people needs to learn and also to see what are some of the ways that we can improve the way that we govern ourselves, right? So that our future is predictable, and then making sure that our efforts bear the right fruit of labor, helping to, again, improve the human conditions, right? That is very important. So that is what I think one of the key challenges that Asia is facing today. And so I encourage people, politicians, people in the government, corporate leaders, to really see what our own activities can help to create that opportunity of making the right progress. Yeah.
And if we can focus a little bit on where we are today, Chengdu, China, do you see China taking on the mantle of global leadership, or at least Asian leadership? And if so, in what ways?
Yeah, so China is G2, right? It has the second largest economy, but I feel that becoming one of the two most important players in the global marketplace also comes with responsibility. I think they have came up with projects like One Belt One Road, which is trying to connect China with the countries that they share border with, but all the way to Europe and so forth. But I think China, yes, they're having all these projects, but it comes with a greater responsibility. I think one thing that China needs to really look into is helping as they connect, as they work with these countries. They also need to help these countries that they work closely and trade with to have a sustainable, predictable, and stable, economy and politics. So to the question where China has done that, yes, to a certain extent, but I think that's one area that they really need to look into. And that's how they will be able to guarantee these big projects like One Belt, One Road, and other initiatives that they're undertaking. And it is a good thing in a way. I mean, they're trying to go for a win-win game by trading, right, with what they can sell and buy, what they can buy from others. It's creating opportunities. But looking beyond that, what are more important responsibilities that they also need to look into to, again, have these countries, which are a lot smaller than China is, to have a stable, footing, the governance, but also at the same time, economy as well.
And focusing on the word responsibility, China has historically acted on sort of the basis of bilateral relations. if it's going to become a global player, do you think multilateralism needs to play a greater role?
I think definitely. That's without really multilateralism is really, really important. The world is highly interconnected. So there's no way. I mean, of course, countries do a free trade agreement between countries, but just like what China is doing with RCEP, right, or even this new notion on TPP, the trade blocks. I think that's really the way to go, and without that, it's going to be difficult to really keep your competitive edge to really compete in the global marketplace. Yeah.
And how do you see China's economic and political emergence interacting with other regional bodies such as ASEAN?
Yes, I have to say that there's still a lot of apprehension among the other Asian players. ASEAN, yes, the leaders are saying that China is really the way to go. I mean, we have to cooperate, we have to promote trade relations and so forth. But politically, still, looking at the history, China has been enforcing a tributary system in a way, and yes, with this mega capital that they have, political influence, they don't really want to become a sort of a hostage to any countries can get into a political, right, and economically, yes, we can all prosper, but things become very difficult when it comes to political issues, and as the China and the U.S. Contest for the global power, for many of the countries, it will be they will come to a situation where they will be they're asking which side to choose on, right? So it's a big homework that many of the Asian countries have, but at the same time, again, China is becoming a very, very important place in the marketplace. So we need to really see how China also convince them, persuade them to see how they can become even play a greater role, a leadership role in the world.
And to date, there's been a lot of enthusiasm about engaging with both China and the Belt and Road Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
In the last couple of months, or very recently, we've seen the cancellation of the Kuala Lumpur Singapore
yes. Mm-hmm.
high-speed line. I mean, I think you've already predicted what I'm going to say, but do you think this sets a new tone for relations between China and other Asian nations moving forward?
I think things like this is not to kind of sever in a way or to redo, right, what has been there, but it's really to kind of see whether we have done this right. Again, when it comes to transparency, governance, there's always a question mark when China is involved. And China faces this reality when the leadership that have gone out and new leadership comes into place, they always wanted to look into whether this was done correctly. So I think many of the countries are wanting to look into, we want to rectify, we want to make sure that this was done right. And we want to make sure that this really helps to benefit the countrymen, right? Yes, the high-speed rail, connecting the Kuala Lumpur and Singapore is really, really important. Higher connectivity, the greater opportunities, and there's a lot more benefits to be gained. But at the same time, procedure is really, really important. We want to make sure that this was done right. So I know that it's not just Malaysia, Singapore, but in other countries as well, right? But it's more of a step to make sure that we have done this right. And if there's any area that we have to rectify, then we have to do so. So I think we can consider that as a way to improve the governance, decision-making process, setting up the right norms for things like this, big projects like this, which cost a lot of money to engage. Yeah.
And given this, what can both China and other Asian regional leadership bodies learn from other international groups? I think China has, in a way, a tendency to dictate
the norms, the rule of the game. But I think we're living in a highly interconnected world. What goes wrong in one place is going to impact the another place. And the problems that we see around is not just limited to one country alone. The problems are becoming more transnational. And so it is very important that we are able to govern, or we are able to deal with these problems using a common language, the common set of rules, norms. So if we can really learn how we can do it, do this right in an effective way, then I think the world will be able to better deal with the problems that we have. China, I think again, it's a China is buying a lot of products, but at the same time, we are seeing a lot of Chinese tourists going to many different places, which is also creating opportunities for other countries. So this is becoming very important. But at the same time, I hope that Chinese leadership is also keen to embrace some of these best practices that have worked well for other countries, and at the same time, China to share what has worked for them as well. I think that really learning is going to be very important in really seeing how we can make our world a better place. Yeah.
And do you think the Belt and Road Initiative can be seen as an example of global leadership?
Yes. Yes, in a way that this one belt, one road is about connectivity, and higher connectivity basically means that you're promoting, encouraging trade. So greater trade will create more opportunities, employment opportunities, and countries will compete as well, right? So people will need some education in order to compete with the companies that are making products from China. With countries like Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan and other countries. So yes, it will promote, that promotion of trade will bring greater opportunities. So in that way, yes, you're giving more opportunity for people. You're improving human conditions in that way. So that's one way of exercising global leadership. But at the same time, again, we have to use this opportunity to really improve the way that we govern ourselves, right? The transparency, governance, the rule of law has to be the pillars, the backbone to, sustainable and predictable, trade relations, country-to-country relations. So with that effort, and China as the one who's kind of leading this initiative, China really needs to help empower these countries that they work with. That's how they were able to guarantee the future that they want to see.
And you yourself are a Korean national, I believe. Mm-hmm. How do you think perceptions and public awareness have changed of China and Korea, South Korea, mm-hmm. over the last 5 years?
For Korea, China and Korea, they're one of the most important trade partners. We have a lot of Koreans residing here, many companies, a lot of investment. But it's a love-hate relations, I should say. Economically, we're really, really close, and Korea's making a lot of surplus from the trade with China. But at the same time, we've got the North Korean factors. So things can go wrong at any time. So how do we engage this big giant China? So that we are able to continuously build trust, but at the same time stabilize this region? And how do we encourage North Korea to, see that there's more opportunities if we work together, if we, become one? If North Korea can become one of the players in the global marketplace and politics. So. If we are able to work together, I mean, there's no way out, but to work closely between Korea and China. I think, this is going to be, depending on how we work and how we are going to be the author of the future, we're going to be seeing our future as something very bright or something that's going to be something very unfortunate. But China, again, is a very important player. We rely heavily on China for trade, but we need to engage China to work closely in helping to create this part of Northeast Asia, see a brighter future. Yeah.
And you dwell a lot on the idea of connectivity, and I guess it can be seen as one of the defining trends of the 20th and the 21st century. Do you see this as a reason to be optimistic, though?
Yes, connectivity. I mean, speaking from the Korean standpoint, I think that the governments between Japan and China, Korea has been talking about how do we connect from Tokyo to Busan to Seoul to Pyongyang all the way to Amsterdam and London. I think that's an idea and a plan that's not completely impossible or something that we can work on. And something like this, like higher aspiration, how things like this will not only bring greater opportunities, and that's exactly the future that we all want to live and want to pass on to our next generation. If we are able to really work on this and build trust and to really put that into action, and again, connectivity, this will be an amazing opportunity that we can create for the world. We are now talking about not only speed, train, but also hyperloop, right? Connectivity, which is going to make our world even smaller and smaller. But again, politics always gets in the way. But I think humans, if you look at the history, have always been solving these mega challenges that we have faced. I think as all of us, whether it be politicians, people working in the government or companies, we all need to talk about this aspiration and see why this is so important, that what we do today is going to impact tomorrow. So let's talk about something that can help us to bring our world a safer place to be, a brighter place to be, a happier place to be. And I think the connectivity is going to be a very important topic, which will be at the center of all the discussions involving many countries.
And for the final few questions, if we can just focus back on the Belt and Road, what do you see as being its greatest challenge over the next 5 years?
I think over the next 5 years, the economy, the world economy, the fluctuation in the economy. But again, I think the biggest problem right now is the income gap, right? The economic growth, Deng Xiaoping was basically mentioning that, we are wanting to, bring this economic progress so that everyone can be benefited. Everyone can really be benefited through this progress that we make. But, we see a greater and greater income gap. If you don't really work on this issue of income gap, I always mention that in order for countries to have a stable government, a good governance, you need to have what we call the vast type of economy. About 60% in the middle, thick, middle income, right? And of course, we will always have high income and low income. But how do we embrace low income? How do we encourage the high income to really work on this work of embracing these low income as well. So this is something that we have to really, really work on. And it begins with education. So the countries that are, a part of this One Belt, One Road, the leaders in these countries will really have to focus on education of their population. And more than anything, through the education, that whoever is going to lead the country, there's a check and balances, that whatever the decision has been made, people are aware of it, and people are able to, support that initiative, because it will be going to help their communities. But this is sort of the work that it has to be done, right? Education is important, and making sure that all these countries are transparent in their transactions, in their discussions, in their agreements, that making sure that there's no behind-the-scenes sort of work, but this is, yes, the governments will have to communicate with the public why this is so important, that this is going to bring a greater opportunity for the public. Without this, I think it's going to be very important. So income gap is one thing, education, work on the education, and making sure that China, with the lead of China and with the support from other countries like Europe, US, and other continents, but also involving these countries, one belt, one road, we need to make sure that the right governance has to be placed in order to see a foreseeable future. That's what I can say about that. Yeah.
And if you were going to summarize the Belt and Road in both one word and one image, what would those be to you?
Excitement. I think there's a lot of excitement there. Yeah, I mean, I've been to many of the countries. I think most of the countries, and I think there's a lot of excitement around this initiative. So I hope that excitement, becomes a reality, right? There's a lot of apprehension at this point in time, but that's the excitement that we want to get into. So I hope that this leadership, political leadership, social leadership, corporate leadership, are able to really guide the country to that excitement that they want to see, and are in place right now. Yeah.
And could I also push you for an image too?
Image. I think it's like an elephant. It's slowly. There are a lot of challenges, but I think it's picking up speed. There are a lot of work to be done, homework to be done, but slowly it's getting there. And once it picks up the momentum, I think they'll be able to get to where they want to go.